This segment of the Alice Stewart Show is brought to you by the Countertop Store, Central Arkansas's premier countertop authority. For custom fabrication and installation of granite, tile, laminate, copper, and more, the Countertop Store, 888-510-4773.
Welcome back to the Alice Stewart Show, 7:19 on a beautiful Thursday morning here in Central Arkansas. Joining us in our Young Gun segment is Josh Blevins, former Young Democrat of Arkansas president and chairman of Blevins Investment Group, and Jack Avery, Young Republicans of Arkansas chairman and Rich Products Corporation key account manager. And guys, we're going to talk about this tragic story about the journalist James Foley, who was beheaded at the hands of ISIS terrorists. And it's such a tragic story. He had been held captive for quite some time, and there was video released of his beheading, and it's just a terrible thing to think of. And the president addressed the situation yesterday. He told reporters that he has certainly offered his condolences to the parents and condemned the Islamic militant group who killed Foley. Here is President Obama on this.
They abduct women and children and subject them to torture and rape and slavery. They have murdered Muslims, both Sunni and Shia, by the thousands. They target Christians and religious minorities, driving them from their homes, murdering them when they can, for no other reason than they practice a different religion.
Jack, your thoughts?
It is an absolute tragedy what happened to James Foley. You know, he was a person committed to his profession and wanted to shine a light of truth in a very dark part of the world right now, and I pray that the other journalist that's being held, Stephen Sutloff, can be rescued. I'm glad that the president is not backing down, because ISIS is an organization that acts with extreme prejudice to anybody who opposes their efforts, and they're nothing more than brutal thugs trying to take over an unstable nation, and it's got to stop. We have to lead that effort.
Josh?
It's tragic. You know, it's a number that is rarely talked about, but there have been more than 70 journalists killed just in Syria since the start of its civil war, obviously not all at the hands of ISIS. But we need to be cognizant of and appreciate the hard work and huge risks that war zone correspondents shoulder to carry out the essential functions that the press plays in the world's democracies. And we should honor James Foley's sacrifice by endeavoring to educate ourselves about conflicts around the world and redoubling our efforts to ameliorate human suffering whenever we find it.
And in this group, ISIS, the group that had captured James Foley, took video of this horrific incident and say that this was meant as an act to warn the United States to stop their military involvement in Iraq and the airstrikes there. And this was their way of pushing back on the administration. His family, as you can imagine, just completely grief-stricken. The courage and bravery they have shown since this is just remarkable, and it's heart-wrenching to see them and hear them. But his grief-stricken parents have spoken out, and they refer to their son James as a courageous soul who wanted to tell the stories of those who did not have a voice. And here is John Foley, the heartbroken father of our murdered American journalist James Foley.
It's difficult to find solace at this point in time, but we know Jimmy's free. He's finally free. Yes. And we know he's in God's hands. And we know he's done God's work. And we know he's in heaven.
It's just so hard to hear and see, but the family had a feeling that this would be the way this would end. And Josh, your thoughts when you hear the family?
It's tragic. By all accounts, Mr. Foley was a very impassioned guy. He was one of the early AmeriCorps teachers, worked in 3 different states back in the early 90s. He'd been captured previously by Gaddafi loyalists in Libya in 2011. So the guy had a tremendous amount of passion and dedication to his craft. And it's unfortunate, the Defense Department yesterday made the very rare admission that they had attempted an unsuccessful Delta Force assault on where they thought that the two journalists were being held. That was unsuccessful. So there were attempts made to rescue this guy, and it's tragic that it didn't end more positively.
Jack, your thoughts on hearing the family and their response to this tragic news?
No parent should ever have to bury their children, and my heart goes out to the Foley family. And to Josh's earlier point, it does highlight the risks that our troops take, correspondents take, State Department officials take when they go into some of these nations that are embattled, and they're going to try and do the right thing. They're trying to shed a light, to tell a story, and to let folks around the globe know what's happening in some of these areas. So, I am so sorry what happened to James Foley, and I feel terrible for the Foley family for what happened and how he was brutally murdered. It's just not right.
I want to ask you this. Josh just brought this up, and this news came down late yesterday that Foley had been held for 2 years, as well as others, including, as Jack had mentioned, Stephen Sotloff, another American journalist. The Obama administration announced late yesterday that they did send U.S. troops to Syria recently and attempted to rescue these hostages being held by Islamic militants, including Foley and others. But the rescue attempt failed, and a Pentagon spokesman says that they were working to target a captor network inside the militant group, and the effort failed. The questions have come up as to why did they announce this? Clearly, it's nice to know that they tried to save them, but some say that this puts others who are being held at risk, knowing that here's efforts that the U.S. government and military is taking to try and rescue them. There's a fear that this will put others being held in danger. Jack?
I think it's important to note that ISIS is not a nation state to where they have identified areas where they're holding prisoners, and they don't have an identified hierarchical structure within their governing body. That said, when they did announce that, I definitely raised an eyebrow, thinking, well, what kind of direction are they taking, or what intelligence are they receiving over there before they moved in? Was this a miss by a matter of minutes, or was it a miss by days? I certainly hope that after they announce that they intend to release a little bit more information about the decision-making process into going in there on that failed mission. Missions fail a lot, but we're talking about American lives on the line, and if we're going to go in there and save Americans, we need to be sure that we are 100% accurate.
Josh?
I think what the administration was probably trying to do is to say, Al-Qaeda, we're not going to attempt to purchase the lives of Americans or our allies any longer. I read a report in the New York Times late last month talking about how in the past 5 years, $125 million had been paid to Al-Qaeda in ransom payments, and $66 million of that came just last year alone. So it's clearly, these payments are occurring at an escalating clip. And I think what the administration was probably trying to accomplish was to say, listen, if you capture Americans, if you capture our friends in the future, we're not going to play by the rule that Europe has largely played by in bankrolling Al-Qaeda through ransom payments. I think what they're saying is, these responses in the future will be dealt with through negotiation, and if not negotiation, then American military might.
Right. Well, we will certainly be following this, and it's important to note that our military, we praise them for their efforts to try and rescue them and putting their lives on the line to save those who are being held hostage. And it's just a difficult situation. Appreciate both of you, Josh Blevins and Jack Avery, our young guns. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thanks.
Appreciate you. We will take a break. When we come back, we will talk about human trafficking in response to the Attorney General's report on this serious issue. We'll talk with Alicia Jordheim. She has written the book Made in the USA that sheds light on this serious issue. This segment of the program brought to you by the Countertop Store, 9817 Maumelle Boulevard, or give them a call, 888-510-4773.